Chit Chat is sponsored by Fun Again Games, where everyone is welcome at our table, and your source for hard-to-find imports, liquidation games, new releases, and much more. Be sure to visit funagain.com to check it out. On episode 96 of Chit Chat, we talk about comfort zones in gaming. Are there games or other things that make you feel a little uneasy at the table? Well, we dive in and discuss and save some time to share what games are making us happy too. Welcome back to Chit Chat. This is episode 96. Emily, we're 4 away.
I know.
From the
getting
big
close
100.
To 100.
We're getting close. I was thinking maybe we would do a countdown starting with this episode, like a top 5 down to 100.
Okay, well,
but we're not going to do that.
Oh, well, I was going to say, you could just say 5, and then when you watch them all in a row, you get the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
That's true. But in our 100th episode, we don't know exactly what we're going to do, but it's going to be something special, just like this episode. Because in this episode, we're going to be talking about comfort zones, or our comfort zones. Now, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording. As it relates to gaming or being at the game table, this doesn't necessarily mean games you don't like.
Oh, sure.
Correct.
That's a different
Or
topic.
something like that. Or like, oh, I'm not comfortable playing this game because I don't like those games.
Yeah.
But more about basically maybe being intimidated.
Sure.
Things that fall into those categories. Could be types of games. It could be settings. It could be different types of people that you might play with or might not play with. But we're going to talk about that. Before we get to any of that and the games we've been playing, though, we have a winner from last episode, which was
That was our live episode, and our winner is M.W. Hirsch. Congratulations, you won a copy of Initiative. Not just any copy, but Jeremy's copy of the
Jeremy's
Initiative.
copy.
If you watch that episode, you'll see him talk about it. So congratulations. Please email us at manvsmeeple@gmail.com. We'll make sure that you get your game. We are giving away another game today.
Pretty big one.
A pretty big one. We're going to give away a copy of Merchants of the Dark Road, like the standard retail edition of this game, which is going to be available, or may already be available in retail. I'm not sure exactly. It's shipping.
It's got to be pretty close.
It's got to be pretty close. So, but you have a chance to win one. So please continue to comment. We love reading all those comments every week.
Yeah, and in fact, speaking of comments, M.W. Hirsch's comment was Michael and Wendy Hirschman? I can't remember their last name.
Michael and Wendy.
Michael and Wendy, you know who you are. We played games with them at the Buckeye Game Fest. All of us played games with them.
Yeah.
You played Anunnaki with them.
I did, yeah. Play Anunnaki with them.
Alicia and I played Founders of Teotihuacan.
You'll never guess what I played with them. But it was Earth.
She played Earth, as she did with everybody at the Buckeye Game Fest.
Yeah.
I don't know if... I think Jeremy even played Ark Nova with them. That marathon game of Ark Nova.
They hit every group.
They did.
They
And they were great. So I'm really happy that they won the initiative.
Yeah, that's fitting.
It was fitting.
It's fitting.
So today we are going to be talking about, like I said, comfort zones.
Yes.
Ryan, why don't you start and talk about how would you define your comfort zone as it relates to gaming?
And I think we kind of have a discussion about what it means to have a comfort zone. And I think people get confused a lot when they talk about what's inside their comfort zone and what's outside their comfort zone. For one thing, I do think that when it comes to gaming, people should be encouraged to kind of step out of their comfort zone a little bit and
as with all things
and
in
experience
life.
some new things, but also at the same time there are some situations that are just uncomfortable. And I think that there's kind of a difference between those things. Like one of the examples that I give is playing Cards Against Humanity with your family, with your parents, especially if you have more conservative parents. That might not be the most comfortable experience for you.
Sure.
But and maybe even just playing a game like that with your family is already stepping outside your comfort zone. I mean, we have a lot of games like that, I would say. And
I think what's important is recognizing what is comfort zone versus taste. Because in that situation, if that's the only time I've ever played Cards Against Humanity, I might say, this is a terrible game. I never want to experience that again.
That's a good point.
But if you played it with your friends at college and you're having a good time, you're like, oh, actually, this game could be kind of fun. So you really have to realize like which parts of it are comfort zone and which parts of it, like what are the different elements that are making up this situation that might not just be the game itself, right?
And it could be, like you said, it's not necessarily, I wouldn't say like, oh, I don't like heavy games. But maybe that is, like maybe they just make you deeply uncomfortable. And for some people, it's thematic. They don't like playing certain themes in games. Like maybe they don't like playing horror games because they make them, or games.
So true.
You see some of these games that are overly sexualized that necessarily like, you sit down at the table, you look at the art and you think, makes me very uncomfortable seeing this artwork. So I think that there's a lot of things that could make someone uncomfortable when they're playing a game or act outside of their comfort zone. But that stuff I think is not something you you want to push somebody towards.
Sure.
Right? Like if
No.
somebody looks at the theme and says, zombies make me very uncomfortable. I don't like the concept of zombies. Don't be like, well, step out of your comfort zone and play, right?
But here's the thing. So my mom came by while David had set up Cthulhu Death May Die, right? And you were going to play with your family. And what she told me was, oh, I don't know. I don't like the monsters thing. Like, I don't really get it. I think for her, though, that was definitely a sign of it's out of her comfort zone.
Sure.
Like, she doesn't do a lot of stuff with monsters like that. But she's not, like, grossed out to the point where she couldn't play it. And what I told her on the way home was, like, that David talked about having a really great experience playing that game with people at Buckeye Game Fest. And I think she could get really into that type of game where it's like, you know, dice rolling, exploration, kind of working cooperatively. She likes those types of games. And I was like, so don't let that alone stop you. I think that was a place where, out of her comfort zone for sure, like she looks at the board and is like, oh, I don't know about this game. But I think she could expand into it. But again, that's definitely a comfort zone thing.
Well, I think that's I think that's where I kind of set my definition, right? Like comfort zone is something that you could be persuaded to try.
Sure.
Whereas like people have limits of things they're like, I'm not going to go there. Yeah. And I think you should definitely know someone before you're like, step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Like you, for example, David, I want to shift the focus onto you because I've been trying to get you to try some games out of your comfort zone for a while. Like
what game?
Like for example, Twilight Imperium.
Yeah. Yeah.
David's face.
Still not sure. And that is outside my comfort zone. But I will say this. There was a game last year that we've talked about that was absolutely also one that I, by all appearances and everything I'd known about those kind of games, out of my comfort zone, and that was Cuba Libre.
Yeah.
And one of the things you guys were just talking about that I think is something I wanted to point out is often has to do with the kind of thing that might be out of your comfort zone, but then also the setting and the people that bound together with that might let you get past that.
Sure.
Like you were talking about playing Cards Against Humanity with your parents, not so great. At college with your friends, maybe a lot better.
Yeah.
That can always help ease people in and out of their comfort zone. I played Cuba Libre I had the fortunate time of playing with Rodney, who taught me, like, of all people to teach you a game in person. Rodney, I mean, I know he's a friend of ours, but at the same time, he's Rodney Smith.
He knows how to teach a game.
He knows how to teach a game. He's teaching me Cuba Libre over, like, effectively these voice things or these video messages. And it was over weeks of time. Also, another thing that doesn't exactly sound compelling to me. Like, hey, do you want to play a game? It's going to take us several weeks. Not usually my thing, but it was a great experience. And I'm glad that I got outside my comfort zone because I was able to see the great things about what those kind of games have to offer that make me want to play more of them. Now, I want to ask Emily about comfort zones as it relates to board gaming, but I also want to talk about her own personal little comfort zone she has here. This pillow, which is her comfort zone, but her right arm right now is not her comfort zone necessarily.
Yeah.
Emily broke her arm. Emily, you
I
want to
did.
tell us? We kind of know the story.
That was quite the segue, though, by the way.
I know. I was thinking about that the entire time. What happened?
So I was bouldering or rock climbing on Easter weekend, on Easter Sunday, and was going for a route that I had been working on, my project.
Indoor.
Indoor.
Yeah, this wasn't like on the sheer cliff on the side of a mountain somewhere.
No. And bouldering is different because you're not actually like harnessed in, so you're just free climbing. It doesn't go up as high though, and they're usually they're more about complexity of the route and less about like going up to really high heights. So I was working on a route that I've been working on. For the first time, I videotaped it because I was like, I want to see what I'm messing up on. And I really went for the last one, swung over, and fell, apparently completely onto my right arm. So I looked down and I just thought, that's not what an elbow is supposed to look like, right?
No, and what was the terminology the doctors used?
They said it was an obvious distortion.
An obvious distortion. We were talking before we started recording about that terminology and whether there was someone who they asked, hey, is this a distortion? And
it did look, we've seen the video, and it did look pretty obviously distorted to my untrained eye.
Yeah, and we did see the video, and I'm going to warn you right now, we're going to slowly lead up to this. Emily was kind enough and good sport enough to let us show a snippet of that video. So if that's going to make you squeamish, because the arm does get dislocated.
It's obviously distorted.
It's not gory by any stretch.
It's not gory. There's nothing external.
It's
Right.
not.
It's not one of those
gory.
situations where the elbow pops out of the skin.
And she's a good sport and has a
Still
good sense
have
of
an
humor
arm.
about it. So we're gonna show you a little clip of it right now. We'll be back in like literally 3 to 5 seconds.
Somebody once told me the world is Somebody once told me the world is
Okay, that was the fall.
We're glad that you're
There it
okay.
is.
We are glad
Thank
that
you.
Emma was
Glad that you're
okay.
I think
We
it
are
could have
also
been worse. We're glad that it was just a broken arm.
Just a broken arm.
for sure.
Now, I'm curious. We talk about comfort zone, and this is my tie it back into the topic. So, a situation like that where you're bouldering and you have a fall, now your arm's broken. Does that dissuade you from getting back up there and trying again, or do you feel even more encouraged to get back up there and like beat it? Or
I mean,
whatever?
personally, like I've had a lot of free time this past week, not being able to use my arm or go to work. So I have been thinking like, oh, I have a lot of free time. I should go rock climbing. And then I keep going, oh wait, I can't go rock climbing because I have this arm. So I'm excited to get back to it. I probably won't do that route ever again because that specific one has a little bit of bad memories for me. But
If you do, get it on tape again.
I think that
Because
that's,
I want, you know, like I can imagine the mental situation going on when you're right at that moment and you're like, am I going to go for it? Like we've seen movies like that.
Yeah.
And then they
you have that
make
block,
it.
and you're like,
you know what's so funny
you
though
might
is
make it the second time.
so
Or you might not.
So it was recording the whole time, and so the full clip is like 8 minutes because it wasn't until I told one of the paramedics to get my phone that they actually went and got it and stopped recording. But there's like 3 minutes in, somebody comes and does the same route and does it super easy, like no problem. Which I think is a good
just
point
can
of like
I wanna
everybody
see
has
that
different
footage.
comfort zones too, right? So
Yeah.
like for me, did it, broke my arm. For the next guy did it, and he was like, oh, that was a really easy route.
and
Did he
that's
come down
where-
to the camera and like go, yeah?
No, he didn't.
That's where I was. That was my tie back in, right? Because we have people like that in board games, just like any other aspect of life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a very, very, very bad experience with something.
Yes.
Even like a semi-traumatic experience with something that makes you say, "I am never trying this again."
Yeah.
Like the last time I played Twilight Imperium, everyone laughed at me. I didn't know the rules. I did so bad. This isn't me. I'm
I'm
just
still
saying.
sorry
Oh,
about
okay.
that.
I was
David was the one laughing at me. But
Never heard this
You
story.
can literally
I
have
feel
these
really
experiences.
bad.
And I've heard of people who've had experiences like this where they feel afterwards they feel so bad that they're like I literally got laughed at. I'm never gonna play that game again.
No, and that's
And and some people that'll be a comfort zone issue.
Yeah, that's exactly what could have happened with Cuba Libre, but not in my situation because it was such a, like, everyone involved. It was Rodney and Rich Summer, and everyone was, Rodney's the only one who knew how to play, but he was very helpful, very nurturing, really, of, even when we clearly would do something and I'd realize a turn later, like, oh, that was dumb. Like, I shouldn't have done that. No one made me feel dumb. And that's the biggest thing. I think one of the biggest hurdles about comfort zone for board games is feeling, we talked about this, intimidated.
Yeah.
And I think what goes hand in hand with that is feeling dumb. Like you feel like everyone else at the table is here
They all get it, and you
and
just don't
you're
get
down
it.
here.
Yeah.
And one of the things you mentioned I thought was interesting is like, it kind of leads to potentially being uncomfortable was being at a table where you don't know the game, someone gives a light teach
Or a bad teach.
or a bad teach, and everyone else at the table knows how to play already. So you were the only one that needed the teach, and then you feel kind of like, oh well, I'm kind of lost.
Yeah, I mean that is a very I don't know if that's like a
Pretty
that's
specific.
That's the kind of thing that you don't know before you sit down at a table. But I think
Yeah.
it could lead to a very uncomfortable experience of having to be that person that's like, okay, explain this part to me again. Explain that part to me again. Can I see the rule book, please? I need to read about this. And just like you said with the group, and I almost feel like we've been doing a series because we talked about bringing new people into
Yeah,
gaming.
yeah.
We talked about board game etiquette at the table. And I think all of those things kind of come into play here. And if you have people, if I clearly don't understand the rules and I'm playing with you and Emily, you're going to stop and be like, it's just because you did that action, it's very clear to me that you missed some important step of the rules. And you obviously seem very unclear. So let's take a minute and talk about that. There are other players that will just let you make that move. And then in 3 turns when they're like, I
Exploit it.
can't. Well, and there are. We all know that there are people like that will let you mess up and exploit it. Hopefully none of our viewers.
None of our viewers.
But there are people that will do that, and that could lead to a very uncomfortable experience. And for me, So, and that has happened, and that's why there are certain games that I'm very hesitant to try. So, for example, if you've been watching Chit Chat, I kind of went on that 18xx journey where I got way more into 18xx games, and I would have never done that, except I had a guy in our gaming group who was like, okay, we're going to play Age of Steam, we're going to play, City of Big Shoulders, we're going to play Railways of the World, I'm going to like teach you all of the different pieces you need. If he had just showed up one day with an 18xx and said, we're all going to play, then I would have felt very uncomfortable. Like, I wouldn't have known what I'm doing. But having that guidance and having somebody that was willing to like go the extra mile to like bring us all kind of into that experience, I think was incredibly helpful. And that's the only reason that I'm comfortable playing 18xx games now.
Yeah, I don't know that that's a genre that's definitely outside my comfort zone. And I don't know, how long are 18xx games?
They could be like 6 hours.
Okay,
6
so there we
days
go.
even.
This is the perfect answer. I think, and we've talked about this before, but one of the big hurdles for me in comfort zone is the amount of invested time that I'm getting myself into, particularly if it's a type of game or genre that I'm not super familiar with.
Sure.
Like, for instance, Cuba Libre, if someone said, hey, we're going to sit down and it's going to be several hours,
Yeah.
because I know it, because I like it, I know I'd get into that. But it's kind of like, I'm going to draw an analogy here. Hopefully I don't offend any family members that are watching. Who am I kidding? They're not watching. But when you go to sort of like, not your own family, but maybe in-laws, again, no offense anyone. But when you go to extended family's house for like a lunch or a brunch or something like that, and there's like this ill-defined amount of time that you're going to be there.
Yes.
And like maybe you're with your significant other and they're talking to a lot more people because they know and relate to those people a lot more than you do. And you're kind of the odd person out.
Yeah.
I get very uncomfortable in those situations.
Brian does the same thing. He asked me, he's like, so what are we doing right now? How long is this going on for? And I was like, we're just chatting. He's like, right. Can I go read? Like, what is happening right now?
Well, I think when you're committing to a long game, when you're committing to a game that's 4 to 6 hours that you've never played before, there are some times when you're like, okay, I can tell I'm going to like that game. But if you don't know, what you're basically committing to is if you don't like that game, you might know in the first 45 minutes that you don't like it, and you've got another 4 hours and 15 minutes to go that you have to sit there.
Scares the hell out of me. Like, that's what I don't want to happen. Like, in a social setting, I actually can react to that pretty well because I can play in the social setting. I can start goofing around and making friends. In a game setting that I don't know what it's going to be like, and I'm like, oh, I signed up for this? This is what we're doing in this game? No, I wouldn't have played this, and we have hours left. That's what scares me about something like... And I probably have a lot of misconceptions about Twilight Imperium specifically. I always thought it had a lot of diplomacy and stuff in it, but it doesn't really have much of that.
I mean, not like I want to go off on a huge tangent.
Sure.
But games like Twilight Imperium, and again, this is going to go back to the table. Tables play Twilight Imperium very differently. Some tables play a very combat-focused game. Some tables play a heavy negotiation game where you literally spend like 20 minutes in between every round just negotiating with people. Oh, wow. And again, some people are going to like different aspects of that game more than others. And so you got to know what kind of group you're playing with, because it might be, if you're not that kind of person that wants to like debate, negotiate, that's a very uncomfortable 20 minutes.
See, and my thing outside of my comfort zone is playing a game with a group I haven't played with before where somebody really likes the game and I, like 5-10 minutes in, realize I don't like this game. Because I always feel so uncomfortable just sitting there and they're like, isn't this great? Isn't this the best? And I'm like, this is okay.
You're
when
waiting
does it end?
the game wraps up and they're like, what did you think? And you've been sitting there dreading like how to answer that question.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, you obviously love it. There are some good points of it.
So there are a couple. So like I've had some good experiences and bad, but there's 2 games. Sidereal Confluence is 100% a negotiation game. And New Angeles, if you remember that one from Fantasy
I never
Flight,
played it, but I remember that one.
And when we played that, there were some people at the table that were very uncomfortable because that game is literally arguing. Like, you just argue with each other in New Angeles, and that's what the game is facilitating. It's, I mean, you need, like, you're trying to get votes from people, you're trying to get your things to pass, you're trying to, like, find allies amongst the table. And if you are not on, and you are not ready for that experience, I could see, there were people that played with us that were just uncomfortable and just wanted the game to end because they did not like the heightened emotions that went into it. Whereas, like, Sidereal, the group I played with was very laid back and chill. And it was just very similar games with very different experiences too. And I can see people being very uncomfortable when everyone around them is just yelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, for sure, very uncomfortable, and then it also can have a negative effect on everyone else if there's even just one person at the table who's really not playing along.
Right.
It kind of makes that whole experience kind of go off.
That's what I
the
mean,
rails a
and that
little
would be
bit.
you sitting there going like, how many more hours? How
And
long
then
did I say this game
And
was?
I'd feel that way, and at the same time, I'd feel bad about being the guy who was
Yeah.
like not being
Catch
able to
22.
play along very well.
Well, that's why I say you have to have people that can get you out of your comfort zone. So if we were going to play
Yeah.
Twilight Imperium, and we, you have the complete freedom, like David, if you don't like this game, just say.
But I
Just say
think you
so.
need to
I'm
know-
tapping out.
Right, tap out, and that's fine. We'll either just fill your spot in, or we'll just switch to a
Right.
different game. And you have to have people that are willing to do that.
That's a big ask.
Well, it is a
I
big
think
ask.
it's easier if you know what your comfort zones are, right? So if you can
Sure.
say like, this is the things I like in games, this is the type of setting I like, or if they just know you well enough, right? Like the three of us play often enough that like we know when we can give you feedback, or we know when you're feeling like, okay, Ryan probably isn't into this game because he's acting this way. So knowing your comfort zones though can be helpful to make sure like you're only doing one thing outside of your comfort zone, right? Like all the rest of the elements.
Sure,
lined
that's
up.
a good point too. Like knowing what you can handle. Like,
yeah, exactly.
okay, I don't normally play this theme, but I love these mechanics.
Yeah.
Or I love the group of people.
Yeah.
I mean, I might be willing to step out to my comfort, like I did with the 18xx games. And there's some games like the Hex and Chit games, like the World War II games, where I just look at that and I feel anxious. Like I feel, because I'm like, how do you tabulate all this? How do you keep track of all this? How do you even play these games?
Yeah, it's
And
super intimidating. Like I
it's
think when
very
your
intimidating.
when your mom looked at Death May Die, she probably it's such a foreign concept to
Yes,
her.
yeah.
It just looks intimidating. Like I don't know what there is to this game, but I
It's
don't
a
know.
lot.
I
There's
don't know.
big
I don't know
miniatures.
that I
What are
want
they
to
doing?
learn.
Yeah.
And if I was to go into a convention with people I didn't know for an unallotted amount of time playing a game I didn't know very well that was one of those war games, I would be vastly uncomfortable doing that. But if it was you guys and you were like really into war games, which you're not, but if you were and you brought one over and helped me through the process, it would go a lot differently. So I
Yeah.
think that there are ways that you can kind of get out of your comfort zone. And what I want to
Expand
know, I
your
know
comfort zone.
is there been a time that you've done that you've ended up, I know you with Cuba Libre, was there other
That's
examples
probably
maybe?
that is probably the biggest example of where I've stepped out of the comfort zone, and it was a positive experience. And like I said, the game is good, so I will attribute it to the game, but I also equally attribute it to the situation and the people that I played with. Like, I think that's what we've landed on significantly is, and we talk about this all the time, is playing with a good group of people who, are empathizing with each other and not just thinking about themselves. Because, like I said, it is a big ask for to go, hey, I'm not sure I want to finish this 8-hour game of
right.
Twilight Imperium that we've already spent 2 hours of our time in. Because there's some people who don't want to feel like they've wasted their time like that. But yeah, that's probably the biggest for me is Cuba Libre.
I would say mine is the opposite, where my biggest was probably when I started in indie going to family time games and started gaming with people that I did not know anyone there and did not have a group yet, right? And so the part that was in my comfort zone was that the games they played were usually heavy Euros or new games that I was super excited.
I know, which was funny because I was like, we're going to scare her away. Because like the first time we met, we're like, let's play some super heavy games. And it was like, do we know if Emily even, and I feel like maybe I even offended you a little bit. Because I was like, do you like heavy? And you're like, yeah, oh yeah, come on.
Well, the thing is, like, I didn't really know the terminology or anything, so
Sure.
I was like, you guys asked me, like, what kind of games I liked, and I was like, I don't really know how to describe, but then we started playing games, and I was like, oh, I really like this.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, it was easy for me to come back each week, because I was like, come on, Emily, you love these types of games, just play it again, they've got the greatest games that you're playing. And so after a while, I built up that comfort zone where, like, then they became my friends, and then it was like, these are people I love to game with, and now that's a new part of my comfort zone. But for me, that's definitely the hardest part, is when you don't have a group or you don't have people you're trying to play with. And then I'm just like, can we play games that I like at least?
Yeah,
Well, it's tough walking into a game store for the first time not knowing anybody.
for sure. You
It's
have
an
no-
overwhelming feeling.
You have less of a sense of security. I think that's what we've landed on with this whole conversation is the people at the table are pretty much your security blanket
Yeah.
when it comes to being comfort, because if you are uncomfortable with something, it makes a big difference to have people around you who are like cool and chill with that instead of like making you even more uptight and potentially running you, away from the
it.
table entirely.
I mean, it's definitely, like, I've gone to game stores and sat down with groups that I'm like, I don't really want to go back. Or like, I don't want to
Sure.
go to this meetup, or I don't want to go to this store or whatever, just because of the environment, right?
And even that can affect your comfort zone with trying
To do it again.
to
at
do it
another
again with
place.
new people.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, anyways,
It's a lot. There's no right answer, but hopefully, I think just by talking about it, I think people at home, I'd love to hear, what people think, especially when it comes to challenging our comfort zones. Like,
Yeah.
I love hearing that. Like, what step did you make out of your comfort zone that ended up being great for you? Maybe you discovered a new genre or a new theme even that you really love.
yeah, share stories down below about that. Also, even if it's painful, share a story where you tried something outside your comfort zone and it was horrible situation
Yeah.
and it completely reinforced the fact that you don't want
Like,
to
this is
do
why I
that
never
sort of
leave my
thing.
house.
Exactly. But hopefully someday you'll get past that and play games that you like, which, another segue, is what we're going to talk about now.
Yeah.
The games that we've been playing. We've been playing not as much. You haven't been playing much.
Well, I haven't been playing a ton because I was making my way through Elden Ring,
I mean,
And now you're
which
done.
which I am now completely.
100%.
I did 100% of it, completely done.
So we'll never have to hear Ryan talk about
That's
it again.
probably not
I
true.
doubt that.
I'll
I
talk
doubt
about Elden
that.
Ring as much as you'll talk about Earth, Emily. It's fine. I mean,
I did play Earth again.
not to harp on this because we have talked about it on Chit Chat before, but a game like this comes around once every decade or so. It was a very cool experience for me playing this game. Like, I can't really put it into words other than now that I'm done, now that I literally have no achievements left to do, I started another playthrough.
Did
Just
you?
because I enjoy playing the game
You're addicted
so much.
And
It
I'm
does
not,
sound
I'm
that
not
way.
even
It's
joking.
so satisfying to play this game.
It's incredibly satisfying, even when it's infuriating and incredibly frustrating. It is satisfying. It's just like the past games where you turn it off and you're like, no, I'm done. I just lost again to this guy. And then 10 minutes later, you're like, I'm gonna get back in there and play.
Right.
And even if you don't try against that boss fight or something, you just start playing again. It is if you know anyone in your life that's played Elden Ring, you probably have heard about
I
it.
almost guarantee that everyone in this that's watching has somebody in their life that's talked about Elden Ring.
Probably. I mean, there's the number of posts that I see about it, just random people in the board game community just saying, by the way, I just started playing Elden Ring, and oh my gosh, it's the best thing ever. And it sounds like hyperbole, but almost everyone is saying that. There has been some interesting dissent in the last couple of weeks of people being kind of contrary about their opinions with the game.
But I still have played some games.
What have you
Still have played. Well, for one, David and I finally got our hands on Queen's Garden, which is the new Azul game.
Yeah, we
Which
played it last
we
week.
played it last week on the live stream. I lost terribly. I didn't necessarily. I probably should have read the rules closely. I read the rules, but not close enough, apparently.
Well, he read the rules, and I gave him a brief
And it's
review of the rules, a little too brief, because I did go back. I did never specify exactly the negative points at the end of the game. I did say these will be some negative points.
I was okay with a couple negative. I ended up scoring like negative
Like
20-something.
20-something
Oh, yeah.
points negative score
Yeah,
at the end.
the vicious thing about the
So-
negative points, like Azul, you get negative points all throughout the original Azul, a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
you do. You definitely do, especially in the first Azul, because if you can't place your tiles, they get
Right.
escalating negative points.
In this game, you don't get a lot of negative points throughout,
No, just at the end.
But they all come
you
at
can
once.
get a lot of negative points at the end, and we'd only played maybe
Once.
one and a half
And I hadn't
times
played
last
really
year.
at all, other than
And-
the demo I had gotten.
I've played, so I played with Ryan, and I also played with Alicia this past weekend. And even just after getting those few plays under my belt, and this is me, it was a revelation to me. Everyone else around me probably already figured this out. That game definitely has a point where you're like, okay, now I've got to concern myself with not as much playing the way I have been playing, but also playing down the board that I have so that you can kind of not get stuck with some things.
Yes.
Because I got stuck with Alicia where I'd taken one of the garden extension tiles that had a 6 thing on it. And I had no business taking it.
And yet you did.
I don't know when it was that I took it, but it was like in the 3rd round of 4 rounds. And I was like, well, that's... In the 4th round, I'm like, I don't have any... Because my best option was to use that to play another color,
Yeah,
maybe.
exactly.
Definitely not a 6. You generally, you don't want to spend sixes to play sixes.
It's hard. It's very hard.
But I couldn't get rid of it because the right colors just weren't coming out. I was trying to get it so I get, maybe play a blue 3
2
or a
something,
2 with it, and it just couldn't happen. And I lost like 6. Well, I think I just lost those 6 points.
I lost a lot.
You had a lot of
Spoiler
sixes.
alert. You should definitely watch the live stream if you want to get a good idea of how the game plays.
Yeah.
Because I think you'll actually get to see like the decisions we made and the puzzle. A lot of people were asking. The number one question was like, how is this different from regular Azul? And I think if you watch our playthrough for 10 minutes, you will see how it's very different.
Very different.
But spoiler alert, I didn't do so well. And you know what?
I was so looking forward to it. I got it in the Sunday, the Easter Sunday. And I was
Bro.
like, this is going to be the most exciting thing this week. And then it was not.
That's what you did.
Then
Literally,
she
Emily
broke her
opens. She's
arm.
like, this is the most exciting thing that's going to happen all week. Literally nothing could happen that's going to be any more dramatic or exciting than opening this box. And then,
But I did get to play it with my mom and sister this week, and
That's good.
I love that turn that you're talking about, where you're starting to think about not just, it's different than the other Azules because you're not first taking tiles and then placing. You're kind of doing it, taking and placing and taking and placing all at once at the same thing. So you're very much thinking about, at a certain point, everybody's going to be forced to start placing because you ran out of space in your supply. But if I can game it so I don't run out of space in my supply, I'll have more options than everybody else.
Right.
And I'll be able to do stuff. And I also totally agree with the high number strategy is definitely
bad.
a harder
It's
strategy
risky.
to play.
It's a risky
Hard
strategy.
to play.
I would say that it's very risky
Yeah.
and has
I
a
don't
very
even-
low success rate.
I don't
Seeing
even
you
wanna
go for
go for it.
sixes was hard. My mom went for 5s, and it was just, once she had a bunch of 5s, but not 5 of them yet, it was hard watching her try to get rid of them because I was like, oh,
Yeah, it's tough.
man.
It's very tough.
They can be some significant points, but the most, again, I'm sure people have played and gotten, I've gotten 6 sixes or whatever.
Sure.
It can happen.
That would be pretty crazy. But I usually play them to get the one color 6 or 5 that I want,
For
so
your
that I
color
can get
group,
my whole
yeah,
chain.
that's smarter.
Alicia, by the way, destroyed me.
Well, good. Now you know what it feels like. You got
Like,
a little taste
well,
of
it
it.
wasn't that bad.
Oh, was it okay? Well, it wasn't as bad.
No, but she scored. She didn't even score. I had my best game with you. I don't know that I'll have another game.
You
like
had
that
your
one.
best game of any game you've ever played.
It was really good, my game, and it was one of your worst games. So,
Well, it was my only game, so
Right.
it was definitely my worst game of
well, I
Queen's
mean,
Garden.
yeah.
just,
But Alicia, she scored like 100. We didn't get even up. She didn't get into 200 range. She scored 100 and something, and I scored. I want to say I scored a little. What did you score? 87.
It was 80
90
something.
I scored around that same amount in my game with Alicia. I just didn't get as many things happening. She had a few groups of 5, a couple groups of 4. I'm like, it was just working.
Also, you
for
had
her.
you had
No, I did.
You
I
had
played-
one group of 5, right?
I had a couple groups of. I had a group of 6, I think, even in that game. Neither of us got. Oh no, yeah, she had 2 groups of 6. And it was
That's
it was
tough to
crazy.
do.
She had a really good game and destroyed me over the weekend.
But it was fun. I mean, I think people should definitely take a look at it.
Oh,
yeah,
Watch
I
our
love it.
stream.
I 100%
Just
agree.
know that it's not. This is the next level of Azul.
Yeah, for
This
sure.
is not a small incremental jump like the last couple have been. This is like Azul 2 almost. It
Yeah.
feels like.
Yeah, for sure.
So Emily, what else have you been playing besides Azul?
So besides Azul, also
arm
played
breaking.
Earth, obviously.
Yeah, you've had a lot of time to game, right? Because
Yeah, I know. People have been moving pieces for me. So
I was gonna say,
yes,
has it been
yes,
a challenge?
No, I've just been able to play left-handed, and then we played we played the crew. So that was a lot
that's
of
a
fun.
fun. The new one or the old one?
The old one. But I was surprised because we played it, my mom and my sister and I was a little hesitant about like, how is it going to go? Because it's one of those games where it's a trick-taking game. You're cooperatively playing to try to get certain tricks given to each person, right? So like maybe there's a yellow 8, and whoever takes that mission has to win a trick that includes the yellow 8. Not with the yellow 8, but that includes the yellow 8. And then it gets harder as time goes on, and you have to get
You
like
give it certain orders.
some relative to each other. So we ended up doing, the hardest mission we did was like number 35, which is like 7 different missions, and like
Wow.
3 of them are in relative order. And there were times where we were so close, but at the very end, it would end up where like the person had no other option but to play a rocket, which is the trump suit. And so then we couldn't win it because they would win the hand. But it was those moments of tension where it came down to the very last cards, and we're like, we're gonna get it. No, we didn't get it. And then when we finally did win the mission, it was like this huge, like, we did it, we finally won
That
it.
game is great for those moments.
It is.
I think it's built for those moments.
It's a really good cooperative puzzle. One of the best cooperative puzzle games there is trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to achieve this? But not with me, because I'm the weakest link. I actually consider myself a decent trick-taking player.
But not the crew?
But not at the crew?
But in that game, well, here's why. Whenever I play it, and I think I've mentioned this before, I've played it generally with Rob, who is a trick-taking aficionado. Like,
From Blue Pig Pink Pig,
yeah, Rob Rouse from Blue Pig Pink Pig. And I feel a little intimidated to circle back, maybe a little out of my comfort zone to play trick-taking games, because I feel, especially that, because I feel like I'm letting down
It
the
is
whole
hard,
table.
because if one person makes a mistake, then it's the whole table's
That's how
done.
we're playing the crew.
right?
David's like, I'm trying to win every trick. No,
Well, and
David, you don't have to win every
and
trick.
you can make, if like, there's the times I've played, I've made a stupid mistake where it's like, oh, I can take the blue 3. I take it because I had the blue 9. That's the extent of the genius of my strategy here. I have the highest blue. I'll get the blue 3, no problem. Well, I also have the blue 3.
Ooh, yikes.
Yeah, that's...
And then I think at that, I don't even know if at that point you're done, aren't you?
No, not necessarily.
There is one, you can pass cards by triggering like the satellite.
Oh yeah, we
once
didn't play
per,
that.
like,
but you
every-
could also have everybody else get rid of all their blues, so that way you would still have the highest blue. It gets
Yeah,
very
but you have to do that
It's very
without
difficult.
talking.
Yes, yes,
That's the thing too, you can't talk during the crew.
yeah.
Part of the beauty of the crew is that you can sit down and play for 20
That's
minutes.
what I was saying. I love the simplicity of it
Yeah.
because we literally took it out over breakfast while we were waiting for our food, and my mom was like, "Guys, I haven't had coffee yet. Like, I can't do this right now." And Katie was like, "It's fine. It's really easy." So we played an easy mission with just like one thing to take or two things. She's like, "Oh, actually, let's do
not so
another one."
bad,
And then
yeah.
our food came, but once we played more later. But it's just so simple, and you could just bring it with you
I'm
anywhere.
glad that you've had your family in town too. I'm sure that's been
Yeah, it's been
nice.
nice. They've been
Been
taking care of
helpful.
me.
Very helpful. Well, I have a game that I want to talk about that I haven't played.
Oh.
But we just got this the other day, and it's meaningful to this conversation because it reminded me of Cuba Libre a little bit. It's called Crescent Moon. Is that what it's called? It's behind
Yes,
me
right
here.
behind you
Crescent
from
Moon.
Osprey,
Crescent
yeah.
Moon from Osprey. And I didn't know anything about this, but like every Osprey game, this thing comes and it's a beautiful box. Production value is off the charts. But the contents and the components seemed fairly simplistic. It's not this big, massive footprint of a game. There's just some like hex tiles. You build this map. Each player has components. But each player has this huge asymmetric, well, not huge, but there's this.
That qualifies.
This
It's
is
big.
this
That
is
definitely qualifies as huge.
and
There's
it
a lot of
reminded,
information.
it reminded, as soon as I saw all of these for each of the factions, and there's 5 factions here, it reminded very much of Cuba Libre, because in Cuba Libre, if you're playing the, directorate or whatever it was called, everyone gets a little booklet that is kind of similar, but also kind of different. And this one, they have asymmetric powers. There's asymmetric components.
Yeah.
Like, the components for each thing are different, and the goals of what you're trying to do are also asymmetric. And there's some similar things, but like, there's primary objective, secondary objective, and then they have a year 1 objective. So you play over
interesting.
years, so you can score some points if you happen to do well in the first year, right? So you're able to kind of strategically go, you know what, I'm going to go hard in year 1 and get this year 1 goal. Maybe other people don't. And by the end of it all, you're going to have victory points so you can compare to everybody, but it's through these different pursuits of different goals and different ways of doing it, which is wild. And it looks gorgeous. I cannot wait to play this, although it's a bit intimidating to get through all this.
I would say not just Cuba Libre, but a lot of the coin games
Yeah.
have things like this.
Oh, for sure.
And honestly, I think Root was the game that kind of... Root is kind of like it's a coin game, basically.
They've said, the designer said they took
And
inspiration
I
from
think
it.
Root was instrumental in bringing that style of game to a new audience by making it more accessible, but the artwork and everything. But I think because Root was so popular, we're seeing more and more people take those coin game elements and bring them in. We had Vast, which is from the same company.
Yeah,
but
well, asymmetry anyway.
But we've seen, but not just asymmetry, but like look at Free Radicals from WizKids. Like that's a game when you have several books like that for each different faction, and it's not coin feeling, but that idea of like everyone is playing this game differently within this one game is a very, very cool feeling. And so I'm very excited to play this. And I'm excited for other games to start coming out with this as well, where everybody at the table plays so differently.
You want to hear something crazy, though?
Yes.
This is 5 players, right? 5
Yeah.
factions. The player count on this game, on the box even, and usually they're pretty liberal. You know,
Sure.
they try really hard to go, well, you can play it with 2 players. The player count on this box is 4 to 5.
4? You need 4?
Not even
Oh,
3.
wow.
Not even 3.
Wow.
4 to 5
That
players.
is intense.
Which is a little bit of an uphill challenge for a game, I think.
definitely.
But I really want to get this played so we can tell you guys about it. And, you know, maybe it's no good. We don't know. But I want to try this and see what it's
Well,
like.
I have one
And
like
the
this.
playtime is a little long, too.
What is it?
the
Playtime?
playtime on the, not 6 hours, but the playtime on the box said 150 to 180 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's a lot. And,
But
and
see,
in game,
playtimes on boxes, I'm always like, double it, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. Uh-huh.
right. And it's a game that says it's that long, and each player has to basically know a different rule set. And of course, that generally means that one player has to know all
All
of
the
those
rules,
rule sets
right.
as well. It's a fair amount. This is going to be a game when we play it, I'm going to say, here's your homework.
Right.
Here's your
Take it
homework.
home, read it.
Come
Like,
back.
know this by the
Yeah.
time we get
There
back.
will be a quiz.
Because the base rule set doesn't seem terribly complicated.
Sure.
Do it.
But knowing what you're doing
Let's
here
try it.
seems a little... And it's gorgeous looking.
Thank
So
you.
those are the games we've been playing, and a lot of these have been beautiful. We do have one thing to share with you. We have a reveal tonight.
Ooh.
yeah.
It's an artwork reveal for the Paradox Initiative.
You should have told them at the beginning so that they would have watched the entire video.
Yeah, that's true.
But this
I'll
is
tag
this
it.
is
There'll
a
be
surprise for waiting this
There'll
long.
have been a text at the beginning.
Okay, there we go.
But we have a surprise reveal of Paradox Initiative from Elf Creek Games. The game is on crowdfunding right now. And
It won't be by the time this video posts.
Probably not. I think it's their last day by
But-
the time this posts.
But we have done a live stream of it also at this point.
Yeah.
So you can still watch that.
Yeah, this is the Paradox just talking about it.
It is.
It's like all the time travel going on. But the artist that we're announcing is Nayad. And if you're not familiar with that name, his name is Xavier Durin. But on all of the board games that he's ever done, he goes by the name Nayad. And if you're not familiar with the games he's done, this is the guy who did the artwork for one of my favorite games of all time, Seasons.
Yeah.
And Seasons, like, still some of the best artwork for me and my tastes in board gaming. But he also did Tokaido,
Which is gorgeous.
gorgeous and looks a little bit different than Seasons. Like, he's not a one-note artist, but he
Sure.
definitely has an incredibly colorful style. I mean, he uses all the colors, and if you've seen the Seasons art, it's just really, really robust, sort of like high-end Saturday morning cartoon type stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, even looking at this card, or these 3 cards,
Yeah.
it's definitely a very unique art style. And for those who don't know anything about the game, like David said, each artist is doing a set of these cards that represent like the past, present, and future of these different alien worlds. And so you're kind of seeing the same world there throughout time, which is a very interesting concept.
Yeah, it's kind of like an evolution of this sort of character, at least on these cards. I haven't seen
Yeah.
all the cards from the game. But yeah, it's really cool. He's done Seasons, Tokaido, also Big Book of Madness. Did you ever play that?
Oh, that game was had a gorgeous cover. I don't know if you remember that cover, but it jumps out at you
yeah.
instantly.
I remember seeing it. Like, this is an artist who, when I see his art, I'm like, oh, I like this game. Who's this? Oh, it's that art. Of course it's this artist.
He could do like a Saturday morning cartoon, like
Oh,
that
yeah.
style of art. It's really
Yeah, if you've
good.
ever seen, like, and he's French, obviously, but French animation, it has
Yeah.
very much the style of French animation.
Okay.
So it's really robust and just really, really rich.
Yeah.
So anyway, that is our big reveal for the Paradox Initiative. And like Ryan said, we will have played a live stream of that.
By the time
By
this
the
posts.
time you're watching this, that's already happened. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out.
And hopefully I do better with this live stream, but we'll see. We can look back and hopefully I'll do better than Queen's Garden. But
Yeah, right
see,
now we
we'll
don't
see.
know how you will do.
it's a whole time
But
paradox.
when you're
of its
watching
own,
this,
so.
we will know what you did.
So thanks everybody for joining us here today. I think we had a great conversation about what it's like to have a comfort zone and to get out of that comfort zone.
I was comfortable.
Again, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this, about your comfort zone experiences down in the comments below. Remember, every one of those comments is an entry to win Merchants of the Dark Road from Elf Creek Games. And that's it. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time. And until then, you want to...
Yeah. Make sure everyone has fun at the table. Bye-bye. Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.